Awesome. Okay. I think we are now live on our various social media platforms. Um, Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew Wall. I'm the managing partner here at CPA4IT, where our mission is to help our clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. I am really excited for today's session on the importance of liability insurance and cyber risks for independent contractors. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Amanda Klassen, who's the practice leader for independent contractors at ProLink, which is a cyber and liability insurance company that we do often recommend. And we've also got Swinburne Charles, who is not only the CEO of ISM Grid and a leader in cybersecurity and managed IT services, but is also actually a client. So I'm really excited to hear both from the cybersecurity tech specialist perspective, as well as the insurance perspective, to better understand what are the issues facing independent contractors when it comes to the risks of cybersecurity, and of course, how they can mitigate those risks with cyber insurance protection from organizations like ProLink. So maybe Amanda and Swinburne, would you mind, sharing with the audience a little bit about yourselves? Amanda, why don't we start with yourself first?
Thank you. Andrew, as you mentioned, my name is Amanda Klassen, and I'm the practice lead for ProLink's Independent Contractors program.
I think we've lost your audio, Amanda. Are you getting her, Swinburne, or is it just me?
There was a break in the voice.
Want to give it one more try?
Testing? Sorry,
Yep.
testing. Can you guys hear?
We
Okay.
got you back.
Geez. As I was saying, we're a niche brokerage out of Toronto and specializing with independent contract programs. We work with contractors in a knowledge-based environment, so IT, consulting, and whether you're working with a staffing agency or independent, we have programs both on the professional liability, errors and omission, or cyber that we can navigate the proper coverage for what your contracts are.
Awesome. And Swinburne, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Unless you're
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. First of all, thanks for having me on here. Really looking forward to the discussion. So, as you mentioned, my name is Swinburne Charles. I'm founder and CEO of ISM Grid. We specialize in law firms, acting as strategic IT partners to law firms in the Caribbean and also across Canada. And the reason for that being is that law firms operate in highly regulated frameworks, right? And their compliance requirements are higher than most, and compared to small businesses or general professional services companies.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this for about 20 years, and we'd like to think that we understand a bit about the industry and about the landscape. So again, just really looking forward to this conversation and sharing, some of the most recent stories that we've come across of 2025.
Yeah, because there's always some fun ones out there in what's going on with various different threats that are. I mean, the one that stands out the most to me is the ones that are leveraging AI now. And there's that one where they had the board who came online with this person who had a board meeting, but it wasn't actually the board members; it was all AI avatars. And I think they got that company for millions of dollars. It's unbelievable. But I think that brings up, one of the big problems is that a lot of our clients think that they're not at risk because they're not, a big law firm or a big firm. So they think that they're not at risk. But, what I've seen is that there's still lots of targets for smaller companies as well, because they're usually less compliant, as you mentioned earlier. They're not doing all the right things to protect themselves. So they're actually, well, they may not be as big of a jackpot for these, bad actors. They are much lower lying fruit and easier to target, simply because they're not patching, they're not updating the way firms should. And, even as an accountant and as a professional where we have probably higher requirements and regulations than the average IT consultant, the governing body for the Institute of Chartered Accountants mandates and requires that we have liability insurance, but they don't mandate and require that we have cyber security insurance, which to me, I'm sitting here thinking the threat of cyber is a far, far, far greater risk than the threat of liability. And really they need to be waking up and understanding that. But I think that that's, a universal issue when it comes to cyber is people want to bury their heads as much as they can. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what the current landscape looks like and what's going on in the industry and whether these are threats that the average IT consultant should be concerned about.
Absolutely, Andrew. To your point, a lot of companies, especially smaller ones, do bury their heads in the sand when it comes to cyber liability issues and concerns. And the reason for that is something that's been happening over decades, right? It's never a problem until it's a problem,
Yeah,
right?
until it's too late.
So yeah, it's always the smaller companies, some large too, because they are larger companies are actually slower to pivot than smaller companies or mid-sized, I should say, companies, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the reality is that say any company like 10 users or lower tend to be very unstructured in their approach to IT and IT service management, cybersecurity, etc. And these are prime targets for threat actors. And
Yeah.
here's why. Because again, we're talking about unstructured IT. So there is no corporate firewall. There's no central firewall. Usually there's no office. It's the virtual office or a fully remote workforce where everybody has their own computers. These computers tend not to be, again, managed. So some people have Windows Home systems, some people have Windows Pro, some people work from Mac devices, and they all share a Dropbox drive or a OneDrive. And so it's all disparate, right? And what tends to happen is that these are easy targets because there's no detection systems on these small contractor laptops. And so
Right.
threat actors actually live there. They live there for a week,
Years
2 weeks,
sometimes.
a month, 3 months. It could go up to years. Just live sitting there waiting for the right communication to come across. And these, of course, the threat actors are not like actively this looking at the computer screens waiting to see when something happens. They put rules in place on the mailboxes, and they filter for certain words: bank account, transfer, wire transfer, funding, anything of that nature that will pique interest, and they log that stuff into a different portion of the mailbox where when it's the right time to strike, all of a sudden the sender is required to change the funding account, and all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions, get siphoned over to the wrong person, to the threat actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did this happen? Simply because there was no monitoring and alerting system within, say, the cloud environment, which is hugely popular these days. Everybody works out of a cloud system on the G Suite, Microsoft 365. And although these systems are really good and they allow companies to scale very quickly and effortlessly, they equally need to be protected and monitored so that unauthorized access to the mailbox data and the corporate data can be detected.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And there's things, simple things that not enough people are doing that they should be doing, like multi-factor authentication, endpoint discovery and response, all these things that are the they're not even they're I call the bare minimum these days,
Yeah.
right? Like a good EDR and a good multi-factor system, and actually using that, right? Like checking whether you're on blacklists, whether you're on the dark web, actively monitoring and going out and doing that, is, like I said, it's not very difficult to do, but it's often overlooked. And I think it again is because people just want to sort of bury their head in their sand and they're like, hey, and trust me, I get it. The multi-factors can be annoying when you gotta relog in and it can be a pain in the butt sometimes, but trust me, that is far less than the pain in the butt you will have if you do have a bad actor getting into your system and
That's
taking
so true.
advantage of you. The big stuff obviously we see all over the news, and that's the stuff that garners attention. But every day I'm seeing phone calls to my father coming through. Like it is nonstop attacks on just the average person.
That
And
is
they are
correct.
getting more and more sophisticated and more difficult to discern between whether they're real or not real. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
we had one the other day that came through to a colleague of mine in the office, Rachel, who I know both of you know well, and it looked absolutely legitimate. Looked like it came from Keep or Infusionsoft, which is our CRM provider. Looked exactly like it. Looked 100% real. She went so far as to click on the link, and the only reason that she could tell that it wasn't the right site, because they had used like a Cyrillic letter to replace the A with whatever the Cyrillic A is. So it even looks like it's the same URL. Or looks very close. And the only reason they didn't get her is because with her password manager, it didn't pop up. She's like, that's weird. Why is my password manager not remembering my password? Why is it trying to prompt me to get my password? And so you really have to be on your toes with this stuff. And, you know, we've got a new voice agent that we've launched recently. So many of you might starting to be getting phone calls from me with my exact voice, but that's not me. That's an AI agent. And it sounds exactly like me. And the ability to clone people's voices and clone people's faces really are making it difficult now to spot some of these threat actors as threat actors, even to people who are sophisticated and knowledgeable and informed. Um, and really the only thing that you're going to be able to do once you've clicked on that link and they've got access to your system is to have the right protections in place. Um,
Yeah.
and 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 making sure that, so one, it's not a financial devastation to you, but two, also that you're handling things the way that you should be, because when you work with a cybersecurity team, and you have cyber insurance, they're going to bring in the team to solve your problems for you and help you bring in those. Believe it or not, you will need to employ a hostage negotiator to deal with these people if there is a ransomware attack. You are going to have to disclose it to the governing bodies, and you're going to have to work with lawyers and IT teams to go through your thing. And it's very expensive and costly, even if they're not capable of shutting down your systems. Even if you have all of that information backed up, it is far more complicated than one might think.
Yeah.
And I guess a couple of the other things that we're seeing is a lot of the phishing emails and ransomwares that we've talked about. But also with these cybersecurity insurance plans, Swinburne, you'd pointed out to me that there's actually sometimes some gaps in the cyber coverage and understanding where traditional policies might fail you, and exclude certain types of coverage. So maybe I'd love to hear from your perspective as a cybersecurity specialist, you know, where sometimes those traditional policies don't work. And I can tell you where they don't work from one mistake we made, which is in assuming that liability insurance includes cyber, which
That is
we
correct.
found out the hard way was not true. And really understanding that cybersecurity, and Amanda, I'm sure you'll speak to this, is a separate and distinct coverage from liability. And I'm sure there's other gaps that people should be aware of as well. I'd love to hear from your perspective, Swinburne, on where you see the gaps, and maybe Aminda, you can counterpoint with how LMS is addressing some of those gaps in traditional coverage.
All right. Well, I mean, from the gap perspective, we actually did a couple Instagram videos on this because it's such a problem, right? That traditional professional liability or general liability insurance policies do not cover cyber incidents like data breaches, ransomware, or wire fraud, right? Here's a very quick example of that. This happened sometime last year. Smaller law firm with an older partner who refused to accept change, right? So
Right.
even the idea of two-factor authentication you just mentioned as the first line of defense, he protested about having that because he did not see the need to type in 6 digits before he accessed critical data. Okay, no problem. We had them sign a waiver that stated that, this is what he wanted, and so we would not be responsible for any consequence of that, which he did. Andrew, 3 months later, the same client wired $1 million over to a supplier who he thought was the supplier, when in fact the emails got intercepted by a hacker on his computer system, and those funds were never recovered. Okay, this firm had liability insurance, errors and omissions, general stuff, and the insurance company did not even entertain the claim.
Right.
Because it did not cover wire fraud, it did not cover data breaches, and so that incident covered 2 of those 3 bases, right?
Right.
And so not only, of course, did he quickly change his mind about MFA as the first line of defense, but went further to go into endpoint detection and response and all the bells and whistles to make sure that this never happened again. But most importantly, they got cyber liability insurance, which would cover something, an incident of that nature. And it was extremely sophisticated how this threat actor went about navigating the email chain associated with that particular matter, and also the ability to redirect the funding from the original remittance instructions over to the threat actor's bank account in Hong Kong.
Right.
Okay. Another thing is cyber liability insurance often has specific conditions for coverage, which you just touched on, and one of them is MFA. MFA is like it's like that amber light, just to let you know, hey, caution, slow down, right? Because not to say it's impenetrable, it is, right? We had a customer 2 weeks ago who was working off of a Mac device, and there's nothing wrong with Macintosh computers, okay? It's just that Macs don't tie into corporate infrastructure and controls in the
Right.
way that Windows does, right?
Yeah.
Because
There's no Active Directory.
there's no active, exactly, right? So this customer again refused to follow the instructions or recommendations. Okay, we'll use the Mac. Well, those 2FA, the MFA token is stored in your browser cache, so you don't always have to re-authenticate or re-MFA once you're on this same device.
Right.
Well, a hacker stole that cache. And guess what? Bypassed MFA, went straight onto the user's mailbox and was monitoring again. It was almost successful until our team noticed some anomalies in the access of the mailbox itself. Because a user can't be in 2 geographical places at the same time, right? Yeah. And so we detected that and contacted the customer, and
that's your EDR software that did that, I'm sure, right?
This is cloud monitoring.
Yeah, cloud monitoring.
Cloud as in M365 monitoring in this particular case. Yeah. Because we could not deploy the EDR. Same EDR onto the Macintosh OS, right?
So you're limited in what you can do. And the thing is, even, I mean, that's one way of circumventing it. I've heard recently, I might be mislabeling this. It's not denial of service, but like where they get into the MFA, they boot you out so that you have to re-authenticate, but then they're basically sniffing that reauthentication so that you
That's
get logged
right.
out, you get your MFA thinking, oh yeah, that's yeah, I'll just authorize. So if you're getting MFA requests randomly out of the blue, a lot of people will just hit, yes, and then type in the code or whatnot without thinking twice. And that's another strategy that they're using to bypass MFA.
That's
MFA is
right.
just an additional layer of protection. You want to put in as many layers of protection, which is, your MFA, your multi-factor, and then you got to make sure you got the coverage for your just in case, because
Exactly.
when they hit, they tend to hit hard, right? And like we said, is they're going after everybody and their grandmother, right?
That is
And even
correct.
things like you hear about these Facebook frauds that are happening, right? Where you list something on Facebook and they send you a check with, it's $100 too much, and there's just an endless way of bad actors getting to you, and quite frankly, they spend their entire days trying to figure out how to beat these systems, which means eventually there is no system that will be foolproof. So
That's
that's
right.
really where, Amanda, you and your team come in with the level of protection and the peace of mind of having the liability insurance and making sure that it's covering these wire thoughts and making sure that it covers all the different things. And maybe, I guess, Swinburne, what are the questions if we have an independent contractor who's sitting down with Amanda? What are the questions that they need to ask of Amanda to make sure that the cyber coverage that they're picking up is addressing their individual needs?
Well, for certain, the one of the questions would be, does the insurance policy cover wire fraud? Does it cover extortion? Does it cover business email compromise? Because those are the prime
Those are the
um,
top three sort of levels of
those are
attack.
the top three that a threat actors will get: a phishing email, which turns into a ransomware attack, which turns into a persistent they call persistence mechanisms, where essentially they're monitoring your every move on the
Yeah,
computer, right? And so if the insurance policy covers that, would be very good questions. But I mean, under normal circumstances, with the insurance industry, and Amanda could probably echo this sentiment, is that it all depends on the attestation questions, especially for cyber liability insurance policies, right? And those attestation questions are going to determine what you're actually covered for, outside of those three questions I just mentioned, right? Um, because if you're stating that yes, you use MFA across your devices, then it goes to assume that cyber threats would be covered, because we're talking about MFA here. We're not
yeah,
talking about general liability insurance, right? I mean, even we as IT companies, we do not meet the risk appetite of most cyber liability insurers, right? Amanda's smiling here. She knows IT companies, like, it is a nightmare to get insurance. And the attestation questions are equally ridiculous. Do you have backups online, offline, and on a separate network? Who does that in this day and age, Andrew?
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? We have immutable backups, yes, which means that they cannot be corrupted, or they're incorruptible, yes, but we do not have them on three different, online, offline, and on a different network. That's just impractical, right? Um, and those just before Amanda shares, her side of the spectrum, those are the questions that really the small contractors need to make sure they check those boxes, right? So if one of the anesthesia questions on your cyber liability insurance coverage is, do you carry MFA? And you say yes to get the insurance, but you actually don't, well, your claim could be denied. If
Yeah.
you say you're backing up your data in these different locations, you check the box to get the insurance, but you're not, your insurance claim could be denied. So the most important thing I would wrap up with here is, if you say yes to a control, ensure that you have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest fears that keeps people from getting insurance is they're like, oh, well, nothing will end up being covered. And if you lie, yes, you're right, nothing will be covered. You have to be truthful about your situation, and be honest. But Amanda, I definitely do want to hear your perspective on how LMS's package fits in, and you know, I'd also love to hear your idea of what independent contractors should be asking their insurance provider as well. But before we do that, we do have a question that's come in from the audience who just wanted some clarification and maybe contact details for each of you. Maybe Swinburne, do you want to tell them the name of your company and where they can find out more information if they'd like to get in contact with you? And then we'll turn it over to Amanda to give the same and maybe her thoughts on the LMS package.
Certainly. Andrew, we can be contacted on www.ism, that's India Sierra Malta, ismgrid.com.
Awesome.
From there, there are many
contact
forms and
information.
contact numbers for offices across Canada and the Caribbean, depending on where the audience is dialing in from.
Yeah. So can our next meeting be in the Caribbean?
Absolutely. We've got a Swan Barbados office we could shoot this from.
Yeah. And Amanda, for ProLink, best way to reach out and connect with you guys?
So our main inbox for the Independent Contractors program is icp@prolink.insure.
And that'll be the URL as well, prolink.insure as well, I'm sure, for the website. Awesome. And what are your thoughts about I'd love to hear your answers to the questions that Charles says should be asked. Does your cyber package cover wire fraud? Does it cover, email? I'd love your thoughts on that. And any other questions you think independent contractors should be asking when they sit down with an insurance provider?
So, yeah, it's a monster on its own, right? From your general liability for operating your physical location. It's very separate from your professional liability. Basically just gave it to your IT department and said, like, can you fill that out? But it's with 4 different cyber providers. So my biggest advice is not every cyber policy is built equal. Don't think they're one. Every provider, different new application questions, different coverage limits. Another thing I want to advise of is sometimes you buy a package and it'll say cyber included, but if you go and look, it's a very low sublimit. So I want to make sure the limit of coverage you're purchasing is also going to match what your risk level is. Well, that doesn't make it easy. Best advice is sit with a broker and advise what's your business, and we'll look at what the coverage limits are and get the best package for what your risk level is. Now, at ProLink, we do cyber 2 ways. We can do a standalone cyber policy, which is on an annual basis, or an independent contractor that's more in the tech. We call it a tech E&O policy. So it builds in your commercial general liability, it builds in your professional liability, and it builds in your cyber with it. So that's an old package. Consulting or other types of contracting outside the tech space, a standalone policy is what you're going to want to look at. And where it comes in, it addresses all those that the other policies don't, such as a data breach or ransomware, or even the business email being compromised. Cyber liability works to make it as less jargon. We call it first party and third party. First party is your immediate expense you're responsible for. Third party is if you are sued as a result of the breach, and it's going to cover your legal expenses. We don't see a lot on third. What most important for contractors, micro businesses to pay attention to is this first party coverage. I pulled some data on what that kind of looks like. So data breach, for example, your immediate expenses, this could look like hiring an IT expert to investigate. If you don't have an IT person, you are going to probably have no idea where the breach came from. You have to all your offense. This is a legal requirement. You may have to pay for credit monitoring services in the event you didn't immediately get hit, but are worried, like Swinburne was saying, about something playing in the background ready to hit you. And there's also some legal and PR support you might need. There's downtime. Even one day, if you're billing $100 an hour, one day is $800 lost income. Add to that if you have subcontract paying for, if they're having to sit idle because of an incident, those costs are adding up on top of the itself. And then legal costs. That one, a lot of ICs think, well, I'm too little, no one's going to come after me. Not true. You are as open to any legal action as a big business. And to start off a legal defense, $25,000 minimum off the hop in lawyers' fees.
Yeah.
And then lastly is the reputation. So this one's a little harder to put a dollar figure on. But basically, I kind of pulled a statistic, and they're saying the average brand damage costs for small to medium-sized business would be about $8,000 on an incident like that. So that on something else I've listed, it adds up quickly. So in regards to a standalone cyber policy for an independent contractor, on an annual basis, rich because every business is weighted how their risk is, but you're looking at about $1,000 to $1,200 a year,
which is priceless, you know. And a lot of people just see, you know, I think one of the big problems is a lot of people just see cyber as an expense, but it could be the expense that saves your business, and it could turn out to be one of the most valuable assets that you end up having. And your most expensive asset if you don't have it. Now we do have a number of questions that have come through, so maybe I'll post these to you guys now if you don't mind. So first question that's coming through is, if a company has subcontractors in different countries, does the cybersecurity policy include cross-border data protection coverage?
That would depend on the policy. At the time of application, if you noted that you had subbers working entry, and if the coverage required. So I can't answer it on a blanket basis per policy coverage.
Yeah, but that's, again, one of those things why it's really important to sit down with a professional who understands your business and be like, oh, well, if you're dealing with people and things, we better make sure that that's included. Because, I mean, the one thing I found out about insurance policies is you can make an insurance policy pretty much whatever you want it to be. It's just a matter of, you know, what you need covered and how much is that going to cost, right? You know, so it's definitely something to work with a professional on.
Yeah,
another question that's come.
If I could add to that, Andrew, because we've seen this come to our attention before when you know, certain clients working with groups of independent contractors all over the world to make something happen, right? But they're not direct employees of the client. So in the insurance section, there usually would be a call for third-party risk management. So it's a section where you attest that you do conduct third-party risk management from your suppliers, which they would be, right? In this particular case. And so if you're carrying on that due diligence, then you would qualify for any said coverage, which would protect you blanket if let's say one of these suppliers was to be breached, and ultimately it snowballed to the company itself.
As long as you are actually doing that risk management that you said you're doing, right?
Exactly, because they will need proof as well. The insurance companies will want to see documentation to satisfy that claim that third-party risk management procedures were conducted.
Yep, exactly. So another question about the ProLink professional liability insurance and whether that includes cybersecurity. I know the answer to that, but Amanda, I'll let you answer. Um, does the liability plan from LMS include cybersecurity?
No, there is some of the what I'm going to call first party costs. There might like some response costs off the top of my head. I don't have my wording in front of me, but I'm going to tell you probably about 10,000 to 25,000 on a response cost. There isn't the cyber liability, the third party, and the limits that are included for that first party likely wouldn't be enough in the event of a big breach. And I know that sounds funny as the insurance person selling that, but sometimes the insurance companies do throw-ins that,
Right.
make it look good. If you are a business or you have a threat or risk, need to look at cyber policy to make sure that covering all those gaps, professional liability policy wouldn't respond to.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got one more here, which is, would someone be able to explain how an independent contractor could be vulnerable to wire fraud? Are you suggesting that our computers are attacked and our bank statements stolen, then this information is converted into a withdrawal? No, I mean, Swinburne might be better to answer this than me, but I can tell you that's not usually what it is. Usually what it is they'll tell you that you have a CRA bill due and it's $50,000 and make the payment here to this wire account. And then you will go to the bank and you will send a wire to the wrong person. For the wrong thing, or they'll make it look like it's a legitimate thing that you're paying, but it's not. And that's what I've seen. But Swinburne, you might have some more feedback on. They're not hard targeting your bank account and trying to like crack your password and log into your bank and do that, because the banks are actually, they're far from perfect, but they're relatively good on seeing unusual activity and shutting that down relatively quickly. What they're getting you to do is a legitimate action and making you do the thing that they want by tricking you.
Yeah. So it goes both ways. It's a weird world, Andrew, where everybody loves to sue, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you two scenarios. The first one is the contractor is expected to receive a wire, right? And because the email was compromised, the sender of the funds got remittance advice changes. So the contractor does not get the funds. Instead, they went into the threat actor's account. That's one scenario. Wire fraud insurance would be important there too. The second scenario is the contractor is supposed to wire funds to a customer or client, and that client's email got compromised, right? And so the funds were redirected to the threat actor. The client could still come and sue the contractor for not verifying the changes in the funding, or for God knows whatever reason, because people love to sue. In this case, cyber liability insurance and wire fraud would still come in handy, not necessarily because the other party will win, but because there will be costs associated with that exercise, regardless.
Yeah.
Lawyers, it could be PR, it could be forensic analysis, it could be any one of those things or more. But the fact is, there will be some capital outlay involved, and that's what insurance is for.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great input. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and feedbacks. Are there any other key touch points that we haven't addressed? I mean, obviously we have talked without hitting it on the head on the importance of getting liability insurance. It definitely can reduce your financial risk. It can provide contractual evidence that you might need for certain contracts that you're working on. It's also good from a personal service business risk thing, which Amanda, we've got another webinar coming up on personal service business, which this is absolutely ties into. Errors and omissions, liability, cyber, these are all demonstrating that you have a risk for profit or loss, which is one of the criteria for being an independent contractor. And so this can be really, really important from a personal service business, as well as a financial risk perspective as well. Not to mention just that, like, hey, peace of mind, you can sleep at night knowing that if someone gets in nefariously into your systems, you are protected. And it
Yeah.
does look.
I mean, if I could add, it's not like we haven't discussed it, but it is a really important key takeaway because again, we see these things happening day in, day out, and contractors really ought to appreciate that they are prime targets.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that a small size does equals small risk that's out the window,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and also not to mention, like most of our guys, they themselves are small companies, but they're working at very large companies. And what we have seen time and time again is that they're attacking employees of larger businesses to fish on them and to try and get their legitimate pins that so like if you're an independent contractor working at the bank, you've got access to the banking systems. They're going to target you to try and get into the banking systems, and then you're
Exactly.
going to be liable. I mean, I've even seen there was one on the news the other day that threat actors are going out and offering employees like a piece of the pie. We'll pay you $20,000. Just give us your credentials. We'll give you
Yep.
$100,000. We'll give you 20% of whatever we get. You know, and obviously none of our clients would ever do that. But it's what if someone were to take that 20,000, walk over to your computer when you're on lunch, and grab your credentials. You know,
Exactly.
it's just
Um,
far more vulnerable than anyone could anticipate. Sorry,
yes,
go ahead, Swinburne. You were saying
yes.
something?
And the other is what Amanda and yourself, Andrew, we've been discussing that the idea that traditional is not equal to cyber protection.
Yes, yes,
So
exactly.
if you are in the business as a contractor um, in any type of digital service, especially a digital service. It's one thing to be a carpenter or a closet installer. Like that's not a digital service. You need general liability. If you damage somebody's home, if you fall, have a slip and fall, that type of stuff. But if you're offering a digital service, then you ought to have cyber protections in place in the form of a insurance policy, because it transfers some of that financial risk from the contractor to the insurance company, so long as
As
the
long as you're doing
contractor is
what you
doing
say
what
you
they're
do.
supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that point cannot be hammered home enough.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, legitimately, if you lie to an insurance provider, you are not getting coverage. And I've seen people, oh, they'll never know. I'm like, is that a risk worth taking? Like, I don't think so. And trust me, they will know. They'll figure it out. That's their livelihood. Now we do have another question that's come through. I'm not sure if we'll have the answer because I don't know the answer. And Swinburne, you might. But it says many small businesses in the service industry use Squarespace, PayPal, etc. What protection or precaution to take for those types of services? So I'm assuming like they mean online digital payments.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm not an expert there.
Mm, I would say just, I mean, it depends. Are you referring to payments out or payments in? I would assume payments out because if
Okay.
it comes in, that's not really a risk. You just have to be a man of a good heart or a woman of a good heart to send the funds back where they
Yeah. Or
rightfully
except for
belong.
that one where they send you 1,000 and it was supposed to be 100, and then they try to
That's
get you to
right.
send. Yeah. That
That's
one you
a
got to watch
scam.
out for.
Anybody sees that, that's a scam that's
Yeah.
waiting to happen.
Yeah. If anyone
Um,
pays you more than you're selling it for, take the money and shut up.
yeah. Sorry. So in terms of the payments out, it would just be a matter of taking the necessary precautions, multi-factor authentication, proper email notification. So if someone logs into the account, you get notified. If it wasn't you and it wasn't your assistant, then who was it then?
Yeah.
And of course, we can't hammer this point home more 2FA, right? Have that first layer of defense for online payment applications like PayPal, Square, and any other type of merchant accounts that you may be using. Because at the end of the day, especially if you're using a merchant account and you could take credit cards online, that is a very risky process that should be governed under some type of insurance,
Yeah.
cyber liability policy.
Yeah, because it's really easy, to be honest. Like if they get access to your logins, they could log into PayPal and just change the deposit account. And so
That's
all
right.
the payments that you're getting from your clients are being routed into someone else's bank account, and you may not notice for a couple days, couple weeks, who knows?
That's right.
So that's certainly one of those things in where MFA and then cyber and liability, because if they get, like, for a lot of businesses, you know, that's their livelihood. If the cash ain't coming in the front door, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and a couple paychecks gone, they're out of business, right? And so, making sure that you're doing the right things from a technology perspective, but then making sure that you've got the backup in place with an organization like ProLink, so that in a worst case scenario, you are still adequately protected. So I'm just to summarize, I want to reiterate some of the key takeaways from today's session, which is first and foremost that independent contractors are prime targets. Um, not only for your own businesses themselves, but for the end clients that you are working at and have access to. Those are issues. That, as Swinburne said, traditional liability and errors and omissions does not equal cyber protection. And that is really, really important to know and understand. And that cyber liability insurance helps, but your coverage is going to depend on your own individual security practices and or lack thereof, and specifically, what you are disclosing to your insurance company. And Amanda, I'm sure that you would emphasize this, that disclosure and that conversation that you have with your insurance provider is absolutely critical, that you're honest and upfront about the nature of your business, so that they can define, because they're not trying to, screw you over. They're trying to create the policy that reflects your needs. Now, if you misrepresent your risk, you're not going to be covered. But if you adequately represent your risk to your insurance provider, they will do their best to create a package for you that will protect against those risks and mitigate that downside that unfortunately is a never-ending battle of good versus evil when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And I guess lastly, awareness and prevention equals less risk and better insurability, right? So all of you who are coming out and attending this session, good on you, because we were talking about this earlier, and unfortunately, I feel bad for Swinburne and Amanda, who've taken the time to come and speak to our community, and we didn't get as many people registered in attendance as we normally do for some of our sessions, because I think when it comes to cyber, people want to bury their head in the sand and be like, oh, it's not my problem, I don't need to worry about that. But all you have to do is listen to any media, and you'll quickly realize that this threat is increasing. And as technology is improving with artificial intelligence, doing what it does, it is getting easier and easier to attack legitimate businesses, and harder to protect your business, even if you are doing all the right things, that Swinburne would advocate for you and help you build if you needed. Even if you're doing all the right things, there's no guaranteed level of protection anymore. And that's where you need an insurance provider to give you that peace of mind.
Yep.
And with that, I do want to thank you both for joining me today, and those of you in the audience who were smart enough to join this session. If you do have any other questions, we'll stick around for about another minute or so here. But otherwise, I want to thank everyone for their time and wish you a happy Tuesday. We do have just thank you. Thank you very much. This was an amazing session. You're most welcome. And more thank yous coming through. So you are more than welcome. And again, we do have a session in 2 weeks on personal service business risk. I will be working to see if we can convince Swinburne and Amanda to come back for another session, maybe in a few months down the road. And we want to hear feedback. If you guys have sessions or content that you think would be helpful, and now actually, I actually put Swinburne on the spot because you're a client. What is there a topic or a session that you'd love to see us put on?
This is pertaining to cyber risk or
Anything. Like what could we help bring in some experts and some knowledgeable people that would be valuable to you as an independent contractor? You know, generally speaking, we like to keep it somewhat loosely related to finance and
Mhm,
and personal
mhm.
net worth growth. But you know, where can we help? Because we, you know, our mission is to help our clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a
Yes,
legacy.
yes, yes.
I say that over and
You,
over again, but I think that a lot of that is done through education and empowerment, which is why we do these sessions every 2 weeks. So
yeah.
what content do you think that we could help deliver that you might find useful?
I think more of this, and here's why. Because I did have a conversation with Rachel a long time ago about this, and you guys finally delivered on that, and that was keeping the wealth going, keeping your financial strategies open and options open. That's where you brought in the IT 360. And
Yeah.
so you guys have been doing some excellent work there. And we're also a client of that program as well. So that's the only thing. Had that not been the case, that would be the only thing that I would have recommended. But
Yeah.
you've already done it. So this
Well,
session that we
we'll
have
have
right
more
now,
content coming with Eric too, and more programs, and we're working, you know, this is, you know, these are works in progress, and we aim to make the content better and better each week. The only way I get better is by practicing and doing this and trying to figure
yeah,
out what's right. And some of it hits really well, and some of it we revamp. This I
yeah,
think hits really well. I think I wish the audience were more in tune with it. Unfortunately, the only thing that really makes people realize how important this is being hit with an attack. And I don't wish that
yeah,
on anyone, having been through it myself and knowing what
yeah.
that's like. Um,
Andrew, that's the only thing that works. It's the
yes,
only thing that needs to happen for and not just general contractors. This applies to most small businesses,
it's
right? The
everybody.
thing is, until they're not, it's demonstrated that they're not, and then all of a sudden, all the recommendations that were put forward before, prior to that attack or event, now gets put in,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And they're like, "Are we doing everything? Are we doing everything?" You're like, "Yes, finally.
Right?
You should have done that 2 years ago."
Right? So it's like this, right? I'll leave this with with the audience. Would you drive around a motor vehicle uninsured?
Right.
You
Never.
would not, never, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what general contractors and small businesses are doing if you apply that to cyber risks.
Yeah,
You drive,
absolutely.
you're flying uninsured,
Yeah. That
right?
is a great analogy and
And
also true.
And here's how you determine if your digital systems are important. Turn your network or computer off for 1 week. If you can still work and everything is going fine, then you don't need cyber liability insurance. You're good.
Yeah.
But if you can't do it for more than a week, shut your networks off, shut your computers off for a week, and you're fine. You need cyber liability insurance,
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what could happen.
right?
Yeah.
It just demonstrates the importance of the digital tools that we use every day to conduct business.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So we got one last comment here from another client. This threat requires more socialization, Andrew, for independent contractors to understand it.
Yeah.
You're an advocate, and you will eventually succeed at teaching us. And that, I mean, that's why I do these sessions, and I do feel like we've got to be out there more, just hammering it home over and over again, which is again why Swinburne, I will humbly request that maybe we can convince you to come back again in another 6 months and do this again, because and we will be pushing this out to our social platforms and various shorter, more digestible pieces as well. Because I think that this is an absolutely critical message, and I legitimately there's no self-serving interest here, other than helping you to protect yourselves, because we've been there, we know what it's like, and we know how damaging it can be, And I know how easy it is to think, hey, well, I thought I was covered. I got some coverage with my errors and omission. I've got, I'm not driving around with no insurance. I'm just driving around with, no accident insurance, right? Which is just as
Yeah,
bad.
this is bad. Well, Andrew, I'll be more than happy to come back. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I see it as pertinent as an advocate of the industry. So
Yeah.
let me know.
Awesome. And I really appreciate it. I do have one personal question for you. Um, what's your favorite EDR software right now? Because CrowdStrike doesn't seem to be quite as popular as it once was. And I see a lot of people moving off of CrowdStrike and over to, is it Net? What's the other one? What's the one we're trying to think of the name of the one we're using now? We ourselves switched off CrowdStrike and
Sentinel-1?
yeah, Sentinel-1, that's the one. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So Sentinel-1 is a very good EDR solution. In terms of what we find, the favorite, like Andrew, we like systems that completely integrate into our service delivery model,
Right.
right? So in this case, because we are we've worked with companies like Datto and Autotask and these really like veterans of the industry, which have all been acquired by the monster called Kaseya.
Right.
We are a Kaseya house, and so the EDR solutions that they've acquired over the years, they're all Kaseya now, right?
Right.
So in terms of the endpoint detection that we would is our favorite. That's Datto EDR. Why? Because it ties into our
Right.
service delivery fabric, and so if there is an incident, we are alerted immediately versus having to look in different panes of glass to
Yeah.
look for cloud, to look for endpoint, to look for network related threats traversing the network. That's our personal preference. Solely, again, not because it's a better product, but
But
because
it
it
fits
ties
with your
in,
workflow and your
it
structure.
really
Yeah.
ties in.
Yeah. It's like a Mac versus PC type of thing to some extent. What's your preference based on your setup and your structure?
Exactly.
But that's
Exactly. But
that's helpful.
it's a very good tool.
Yeah. Okay, what about an easier one then? Do you have a favorite password tool? LastPass, OnePass,
So we're IT glue. Again, that ties into our
Kaseya?
service delivery, and also it is pushed onto the client. And when I say pushed, I don't mean forced onto, but we're able to extend it
Yeah.
to the client so that they could use it for free. They don't
Yeah.
have to pay for LastPass or pay for OnePass, etc. Right? And again, ties into our service delivery model. Now, how I know we are really good at vetting software is because I swear, Andrew, every single piece of software that we've used over the past 15 years has been acquired by Kaseya.
That means you're picking the right ones.
Right?
Or the guys at Kaseya are just be like, let's just see what Swinburne's using and go
Using and
fire
just
them.
buy it.
You should be on their M&A team, apparently.
My God. But it is what it is. It's an interesting industry, but and there's so many different tools out there, right? To your point,
Yeah.
so many different tools. You just have to know, you really have to vet them, and again, make sure it ties in with your work model.
Or better yet, hire you who's vetted them all.
Right?
And
Save you some
go the easy
research
route.
time.
Yeah, there you go. Well, again, thank you. I know we ran a little bit long, and I appreciate your time today. Or actually, no, I think we're almost right on time.
I think we're on the hour.
Yeah, we're pretty much on time. So thank you guys very much for joining us. I wish you guys a happy Tuesday, and we'll see you on the next one.
Okay,
Bye for
thanks.
now.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.